Welcome to TSU Human Performance Sports Science Podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of sports science and innovation, right here at Tennessee State University.
We are your hosts,
I'm Neil Monet
and Franka Sindicic, and today we are taking you on an exciting journey to educate, entertain, and keep you up to date of happenings right here on our campus.
In each episode of TSU HPSS, we'll bring you exclusive interviews with our expert faculty, coaches, student athletes, and our students from our departments who are making stride in this field.
You will gain the insights into the latest training techniques, nutrition strategies, and sports psychology breakthroughs that are now shaping the future of sports performance.
All while bringing it to you from an HBCU perspective.
Welcome everybody to our HPSS TSU podcast. Today with us is Dr. Martinez-Sepanski, one of our professors, new professors actually starting this semester. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you please tell us something first to introduce yourself and maybe discuss your background in the sports?
Yes. So my name is Sarah Martinez-Sepanski. I am currently an assistant professor in the Human Performance and Sports Sciences Department at Tennessee State University. I received my bachelor's degree in athletic training at Illinois State University, and then I received my master's in athletic training from Western Michigan University. And then I received my PhD from Middle Tennessee State University, where I actually specialized in, well, my degree was in human performance, and it was a specialization in exercise science. So that's kind of my background. And that also, I am a certified athletic trainer, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and then I am a Olympic weightlifting coach level 1.
Okay, so that all sounds very interesting. And I'm just going to jump from the topic now a little bit because I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
We're also now kind of thinking, should we get a PhD or not? So my question actually for you is like, did you wait a year to decide, would you like to go to PhD program, or you just continued your master's and then you got your PhD, or what was your path about it?
Yeah, so I went directly through back to back to back. So I got my bachelor's and then my master's and then my PhD. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to get my PhD as an undergrad because I knew I wanted to teach. I love teaching. It's one of the most rewarding aspects of my life. And so that's why I knew I wanted to pursue it. My recommendation to both of you, if you're interested in teaching or doing research, that's when the PhD really comes into play. And you're both currently grad students. I would personally recommend that most undergraduates in our field get a master's. So I think you're on the right track there. It just opens up so many more jobs. You get paid a little bit more, so that's beneficial too. So I think you're on the right track. So that's my advice when it comes to PhD research or teaching, for sure. Get it. I'm also really biased towards both of you. I think you both would do great in a program. So if you're interested, I think you would do great.
Thank you. I do, since we started some researchers that we're going to talk about in this podcast a little bit later, I actually found myself very interested in research. And all of the classes were kind of connected to the research and comparing the papers. And I actually talked with Neil about it yesterday. And it's so interesting that you teach us how to find the information and compare it and actually take the good stuff from it and how to recognize a good work. I also wanted to ask you, what did lead you to join this institute here? What did made you join Tennessee State University?
Yes, so after I graduated with my PhD from MTSU, I took a job at Georgia State University as a clinical assistant professor. I had a fantastic experience there, but Tennessee is home. And so I actually applied when a position opened up to MTSU, where I got my PhD. A position opened up. It was, again, a full-time teaching position. And I applied and received that job. And at that point, I had been only in roles where it was primarily teaching. And I love teaching, like I said earlier. But I also, at the time, and still do, I was continuing to do research, write manuscripts, and write grants. And so I wanted to have a position where I was able to do that as well. And so this position opened up at Tennessee State University, where it was both teaching and research involved. And so I applied. And then when I interviewed, after my interview, I was like, I have to have this job. I was like, I have to have this job. I have to work here, because after meeting the faculty and the students really early on in the interview, I could tell that the faculty here, one, respected each other, right, their colleagues, and then really cared about their students. And I've worked, like I said, at previous universities, and that's just not always the case. And so it was really special to see that here. And then I loved meeting the students, and you can tell they had like this sense of pride of being a student here, and I wanted to really be a part of that. And so luckily it worked out, and I did get the position, and I'm here now. But that's what led me to have this role, or apply to this role here.
How do you envision your role at TSU? How do you see yourself bringing more to the table to TSU, especially to that department?
Yes, so I love this question. So my goal overall would be to, I kind of have two, but I'll start with the first one, with teaching and research. So with teaching, my goal is to deliver high quality instruction to students and help them become the best versions of themselves. And so, as I said earlier, teaching is truly one of the most fulfilling aspects of my life, because this is where I can influence students to start believing in themselves. I love the material that I'm teaching, but again, what I enjoy the most is giving students someone that they can have support them and support them through their academic career and their journey. And just watching them develop into a young adult has been really rewarding. So I'm constantly trying to improve my teaching methods and working on improving myself as an instructor so I can benefit my students in that aspect. I'd say as far as the research aspect, that second aspect, my research objectives also really align well with the departments. And so currently, and you both are involved, we're collecting data with athletics, Tennessee State University athletics, which is right in my wheelhouse. It's been a great experience working with athletics. And again, since I've been at different universities, you don't always see that. You don't always see this type of the exercise science department working with athletics. Sometimes that's just not the case, right? It's not so dynamic. But again, it is here. Everyone's very collegial, and that is great. And so I think being involved with that research and getting our undergraduate and graduate students involved, I think that's really going to benefit the program as well as Tennessee State University athletics.
All right, tell us more about that, about the project you have with the athletic. What kind of research you're doing on them, and what teams are you working with?
Yes, so we are working with athletics, the strength and conditioning coaches, to collect basically just data on hopefully at some point, all the athletes at Tennessee State University. We are looking at force variables. We are looking at anaerobic power and power variables. We are looking at flexibility assessment. And again, almost every faculty in our department is involved with that research. So it's been really great on that aspect and getting everyone involved. And the goal on our end is to, once again, get students involved and hopefully be able to publish research off of this data. And then athletics takes the data and they use it, obviously, to prescribe training programs, to track changes over time with their athletes, and even over or between athletes as well, right? So not just individual tracking over time, but they can compare, how does this athlete compare to another athlete on the team, right, in the same position. And so that's what we're doing right now. And again, we're in the very early stages, but it's been going really well so far. Again, you both have been extremely helpful in that situation and with the research and data collection. But yeah, that's kind of what our research is right now with that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great, and we've been enjoying the process as well and also learning a lot of things. And at the beginning, you mentioned that you are also certified for the Olympic lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, have you ever experienced the lack of female representation in sport in strength and conditioning?
Yes, so I actually serve on the National Strength and Conditioning Association's Women's Committee. And so there actually was a recent research study put out last year, and it says there's about only 16% of women that are strength and conditioning coaches, and the other 86% or 84% is going to be men, strength and conditioning coaches. So there is definitely, as far as strength coaches, Olympic weightlifting coaches, there is definitely a lack of women in our field. And so again, with the women's committee that I serve on, we try to tackle topics about overcoming gender stereotypes, bias, or any type of discrimination We talk about work-life balance, right? Especially when becoming a parent.
Yeah.
And we also really try to encourage the younger generation, specifically females, to get involved in this field, because from that research study, that demographic study, it definitely showed that it's definitely male-dominated.
Yeah, speaking of all of that you just said, and considering that you love teaching, is maybe this one of the things that also drove you to specialize in sports science?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things that drove me to specialize in sports science was when I first started learning about, in my athletic training major, even starting in undergrad. I think when we first started learning about nutrition and a little bit exercise science, that's what initially sparked my interest. And then the more I started to learn about it in my master's, and then of course even more so in my PhD, that's when I really started applying what I was learning to my own fitness program and personal fitness routine. And I just fell in love with the process in general. And I really think exercise itself teaches you, if you commit to something, if you're dedicated, if you continue to show up, you will see results. And I think that aspect and kind of that mindset, once you apply it there, it trickles into other aspects of your life. So I think that's really what drove me to specialize in sports science.
Do you use that same kind of mindset to teach and to do those research?
Yes. And I try to encourage my students to feel that way too, right? A lot of the times, again, it's not so much that some of the content is difficult, I will say that. But sometimes it's not so much that it's difficult. And I always tell my students, you can do this. Like, you have every single right to be in the classroom. Like, you deserve to be here. It's just a matter of showing up, like being consistent and looking over, reviewing the material. Like, that's it. It's really more, it's a discipline type thing. So I definitely try to bring that into my teaching and teach that mentality to my students as well.
That is the thing I love about sports, that it's actually teaching you how to live life as well.
Right, exactly.
And if you get to understand that as an athlete, or just if you want to exercise and you see the results, you can also apply it as well to the everyday life. And I wanted to also ask you, in this field, have you ever experienced any barriers being a female?
So I have been really lucky with the male colleagues and coworkers that I have had, where I have personally not experienced or have been treated differently, as far as I know, from being a female. But again, serving on the National Strength and Conditioning Association's Women's Committee, we hear a lot of stories. I've been on this committee for the past couple of years, so this is recent. A ton of stories of women facing discrimination about being women. So, for example, we have students telling us that they've been told no to internships with the football team strictly because they're female. I've had mentors that have told me that they feel like, as a strength and conditioning coach, at some point in their career they hit a ceiling, just because they're a female and they feel like they're treated differently. I have had other women on the women's committee who have told me that her and her husband, they're both strength and conditioning coaches. They finished their degrees and graduated at the same time. She was hired first, probably because she was female. But her husband has been promoted quicker and more times than her.
Wow.
So it's stuff like that. And so again, it's not always like the obvious thing, right? Like, no one maybe necessarily is being treated disrespectfully, but like it's these subtle, like there's still some bias there and discrimination.
Yeah, it is definitely in everyday life, because we just had the discussion a few weeks ago in one of the classes that are talking about the problems in sport. And we had some people saying that they would not look at the same if they would have a strength and conditioning coach as a woman in the weight room. And I'm like, but why is that a problem if we have the same knowledge? And they're like, no, you're just a woman. I cannot listen to you. And I'm like, why is that? Like, I mean, the thing is, I really want to change that. That is why I also want to help and just try to change that way of thinking and show the people that we women actually know how to do the things. We might be a little bit, not weaker, but it's just a human body and it's a physiology, but we know how to perform it correctly and we know how to explain it. And I think that we really have to stood up for ourselves and build that respect in the weight room. And like also outside of the world, because there is still a lot of discrimination going on with the women as well.
Right.
So that is kind of making me sad when I look at it, and then it's still like 220. It's all like already 224, and it's still present. You know.
Right. No, that's very well said. And like I said, it's still definitely prevalent till this day. I think it's better than it was maybe like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
But still, we have a lot of progress to go. And so that even would be an interesting research aspect of just like the psychological aspect of perception of female coaches. Like that's a whole other interesting and individual topic that you could explore. Yeah.
Let's talk about the athlete side of it, because you have some experience into coaching as well, having a CSCS certification. So I wanted to talk about the shortage of female participants in strength conditioning. What do you think about that? Do you think that female work out less than men's? Because that's what I've been hearing a lot. So I want to know what's your opinion about it.
Yeah, so this is kind of perfect leading into this question based on what we just talked about, because I don't think it would necessarily word it as like a shortage, so to speak. But again, compared to 30 or 40 years ago. So what was happening is 30, 40 years ago, almost all the research done used only male participants. So all the research done specifically with anything with exercise, physical activity, or resistance training, all male participants. And I really think that was likely due from back in the day, the stigmatization of women exercising and working out, and it was just kind of stereotyped as something that only men do. And like we were just talking about, I think that you still see trickles of that even today, hence maybe why women are being treated differently as coaches. But I do, again, think fast forwarding to today compared to how it was 30, 40 years ago, we do see more women in the gym. We know more women are resistance training, but I still think we can do better as far as inclusion of women in research in this field. And again, recent studies have been including more women. Part of my research specialty is moving forward and continuing to include women and observe women athletes and participants in exercise science and sports science. And so that's kind of my research goals and aspects. And so doing even just sex comparison studies is something that I have done before and plan to continue to do.
Based on your personal experience, how did you, I want to say, fall in love for working out? Because I know what you're doing, and I've seen you work out before, and I know what you're capable of. So, how did you get into working out?
Yeah, so again, I think it was really once I started to learn about it in my classes and really get into even down to like prescription, right? Muscular growth or hypertrophy versus muscular power, muscular strength, muscular endurance, right? There's different prescriptions of sets, reps, and weight to target all of those. So once I understood all of that and I was able to basically decipher and prescribe exact prescription of exercises, sets, reps, and weights for what I wanted, and started seeing the results because of that, I think that's what really made me fall in love with it. And so again, to me, it's more like the process of doing it.
So do you think that maybe the education part of it, maybe if we educate a little bit more women about the benefit of working out and how you can actually be more details about the way your result gonna come? Because I feel like a lot of female out there, they're a little bit anxious about working out, right? So maybe if by the education, we can maybe help them understand that they can work out and still look feminine.
Yes. And so many great points you just made. First of all, there's so many misconceptions, I think, today with today's social media. I mean, there's influencers and there's so much misinformation, I feel like, and there's so much of it. And so it's hard for both men and women probably to look at that and decipher and say, what is true? What's been proven with research, what is evidence-based, and what is someone just saying because, I don't know, they're being sponsored or that's just what worked for them. But again, everyone's different. So it is very important, I think, to educate and understand the science behind sports science and training and exercise and resistance training, which is why I think it's so important if you really don't know where to start instead of course, you can always do your own research, but that would be a perfect opportunity to hire a personal trainer, right? Or someone who has an exercise science degree and has had the education of what exactly should be done based on the research, not just based on personal opinion or not just only on personal experience. And I will say personal experience is a great tool to have too, but again, evidence-based is the way to go.
That is true. And I always, what Neil said, we often see you working out and you're holding a lot of weight classes. So our question is, what is your perspective on the benefits for a woman to lift weights?
Yes, so there are so many benefits to resistance training, such as having a higher resting metabolism, decrease fat mass with an increase in lean mass, lower blood pressure, lower blood plasma glucose, increased bone mineral density, increased flexibility. I mean, I can go on and on. Yeah. Increased mental health. Okay, there's research on that as well, which is a huge one. And so, again, women should be doing this because I think everyone should be doing this because everyone could benefit from gaining those benefits from exercising. And so I think women should not be shy away from strength training because they deserve those benefits as much as anyone else, right?
Would you encourage older women, for example, women that are in menopause, to also lift weights? Or
yes.
Not?
Yes, and there's research on that as well. Definitely women in menopause. So with women in menopause, we tend to see a decrease, and as you age, a decrease in bone mineral density specifically, low iron. And so strength training specifically can help kind of slow down those negative aspects of aging or different changes in hormones we see during menopause.
Yeah.
And so there's really no age limit when it comes to resistance training specifically. And I think specifically with resistance training, people are more hesitant for whatever reason to resistance train than they are to maybe run or do some type of cardio. So again, resistance training has separate benefits than endurance or cardio training, and women, to get those benefits, should be, no matter the age, definitely participating in some type of weightlifting or strength program.
I absolutely agree with that because I am looking at my mom and she entered the menopause very early. And since then she started to lift weights. And whenever she misses 2 or 3 pegs, she's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm falling apart. And she's calling her coach. She was like, can I please come lift today? Because I really feel like my bones are just going to fall apart. So it definitely, like, she sees the process on her and she started to enjoy it. So I'm feeling happy for her because at the beginning she was kind of depressed because of it, especially when doctors tells you something that your bones are not strong enough, that you're basically falling apart. It's not something easy to hear. Also, I have one more question for you. You are pregnant now, and I also see you jumping and lifting weights. So my question is, would you recommend lifting and still exercising while you're pregnant? I mean, I'm positive that you would, but can you tell us some reasons behind it?
Right. So first I'll say I'm not a medical doctor. And so if you're going to start a program and be pregnant, or if you're considering, or if you're in currently one and you become pregnant, always consult with your doctor first before you do anything. As far as the recommendations of exercising and being pregnant, so the American Academy of Sports Medicine does recommend that women who are pregnant maintain the same physical activity as the non-pregnant general population. And so they want you to continue to work out or exercise at least 30 minutes 3 times a week. So it is recommended through in our field it is safe to work out when pregnant. Now, with that being said, just my own personal experience, before I became pregnant, was heavy weightlifting, resistance training, CrossFit. And when I became pregnant, I pretty much just continued to do that. And I've been really lucky. I know that's not the case for everyone, where I've had like a really great experience with my pregnancy so far. And I've been able to like lift and do pretty much everything at the same intensity. I will say the past few weeks, I'm entering the 3rd trimester, like this week or last week. Now is when I'm finally starting to be like, okay, instead of box jumps, I'll do step ups. Okay. And a part of the reason was because the gym owner she actually came up to me and she was like, okay, I think I don't want you doing any type of box jumps or bar over burpee jumps, just because on their end of things, they want to make sure, like, legally that they're, like, protecting me. And so I completely understand, and I trust her because she's trained multiple people who have CrossFit who are pregnant. And so, again, just for the personal trainer aspect of things, keep that in mind too, right? You don't want them, of course, they may, if you have a pregnant woman who is used to working out, they may want to push themselves. But if you feel like you don't want you don't want to put them in a position that may hurt themselves, right? Even though they feel like they could do it, save yourself and just legally and ethically maybe just say, hey, let's like do a different modification. So I completely understand that aspect as well. But yeah, I mean, I've been like a couple weeks ago, I hang cleaned and power cleaned like 115 pounds. And my bar path obviously is a little bit different, but
I was about to ask about it.
but it's been fun. It's been really great. Otherwise, like I said, squatting, I squat, I deadlift, I do all that.
So, just one question by curiosity: how do you snatch? How do you clean as well? Because the way you're supposed to snatch and clean, the barbell is supposed to stay close to you, right?
Right.
You don't want the barbell to move away from you and do the curved path. So how do you fix that? How do you deal with that
So
with the baby on the way?
you do have to adjust a little bit. And so I know you are completely correct. It is not, you should have a straight barbell path when power cleaning and power snatching. But because I'm pregnant, because my stomach's in the way, I do have a slight curve in my barbell path. But again, it's been like fine. It doesn't feel too different. And I'm like, maybe I've been doing them like wrong, because I feel like completely fine doing it still. But again, I think like since entering the third trimester, I've kind of now really starting to be like, okay, my stomach's getting bigger. I'm starting to notice the change in the barbell path. Power cleaning is a lot easier than power snatching, so I have had to gone down a little bit with the power snatching.
Okay.
Just because it's harder. I personally feel like it's harder to control the bar with that wide grip. And so yes, my barbell path is a little bit adjusted, but I'm still doing it. So I'm still doing it. And again, I don't feel any like joint pain or back pain. Like I feel like great. And I do think, and I'll say this too, kind of back to the original question. There has been research also done with pregnancy and resistance training, and it's shown that women who resistance train were less likely to have gestational diabetes, and they actually had better sleep patterns. And so again, I've been lucky in my pregnancy where I feel like I haven't been tired, which is a huge symptom of being pregnant, and I contribute all of that to just sticking with my workout routine and continuing to resistance train, because I haven't had any, like I haven't felt more tired than I normally would not when I was not pregnant. And I completely contribute that to resistance training and working out.
All right, so I got one more question for you. What would you tell any HPSS student and any department student who are not used to workout and they're not really athletes? How would you encourage them to participate in strength training?
Women specifically, or just everybody?
Let's start by women specifically and then everybody.
Okay, so with women specifically, and Neil, I think you mentioned this earlier, so I kind of want to go back to it. The biggest misconception I hear with women and weightlifting or resistance training is the fear of becoming bulky, too masculine, too muscular, and so they just tend to not want to do it. First of all, you would have to be eating so much food to become that big, and you would have to be lifting for a very long time each day to obtain that type of musculature that they're probably thinking of. Second, I think a lot of women, they say they don't want to become muscular, but they do want to be toned. And I know it's a podcast, but I'm putting toned in quotes because that's usually not a word we use in our field, because toned just means muscular hypertrophy, which is muscle growth. Yeah. And so to do this and to become toned or obtain muscular hypertrophy, we want to focus on high value, which is going to be high sets. And research has shown there's multiple ways to do this. So you can do low load or low weights with high sets and moderate reps, and you could still obtain hypertrophy. That's going to take a little bit longer compared if you would do high load, high weights, moderate reps, high sets. Okay, so that prescription has shown to really promote muscular hypertrophy and create muscle growth, and that's what's going to give, again, resistance training with the high load or high weights, moderate reps, high sets. That's where you're going to see the results you want when it comes to being toned or obtaining muscular hypertrophy. And so I think really what I want to push out with women specifically is don't not resistance train out of fear of becoming too muscular, because I promise you that's not going to happen, and you will get the results you want, and you'll get those other benefits we talked about earlier. And I will say that honestly applies to men as well. Focusing on, I think men as well go to the gym and they're trying for whatever. I think people go to the gym for mostly the physical aspect at first.
Right.
So same recommendation there, right? High volume, moderate reps, high sets to grow muscle. But again, I think once you start sticking with the resistance training program, you start to realize how much better you feel mentally. Pay attention to your sleep, right? Pay attention to how you feel throughout the day. The changes and physiological adaptations you get from resistance training are so beneficial. I know we talked about them earlier. But again, I just recommend everyone should be partaking in a resistance training program.
Speaking of what you quoted, the toned body, I saw a lot of commercials lately about that high intensity training 3 times a week. It's gonna help you maintain that body. So, what's your opinion about that?
So it depends. It depends on what are the goals. You said high resistance training will help you,
And like looking toned, like
to look
burn more fat and getting leaner.
Okay,
body
so
look.
the high intensity workout, that is actually a type of cardiovascular prescription. It is great for cardiovascular health, and I would personally say it's more probably along those lines of cardiovascular health.
Okay.
Right, you're working at a very high, usually heart rate range, very little rest, and usually if you are using weights and doing some type of circuit training with weights in a HIIT workout,
Okay.
they're usually low load or low weights, right?
Okay.
So you will see health benefits from HIIT training. You will probably become a little bit leaner from HIIT training because you're burning the calories, and again, nutrition plays a huge role into that
Yes,
as well.
Of course.
But when it comes to resistance training and wanting to build muscle growth and obtain increased bone mineral density, again, a few of those other health benefits, that's going to be strictly only coming from strength training.
Okay.
And so I have nothing against HIIT training. I mean, I do HIIT training, right? I do CrossFit. It's pretty much weightlifting and resistance training. And again, to me, it's really, if you're doing just HIIT training, and that's what you enjoy doing, do that,
Okay.
right? If you're doing resistance training and you're doing that, then do that. Start somewhere, do something you like, because that's gonna, whatever
you're gonna maintain it.
Yeah, to make you maintain it. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, and just a quick question. What is, in your opinion, the best rest and work ratio for high intensity training? If you can
Again,
give me
it's gonna depend on
personal.
what you're trying to do. It's gonna depend. If you're an athlete, then there'll be a specific work to rest ratio, and you're gonna want to kind of tailor that work to rest ratio to whatever kind of that sport when you're during the competition,
Okay.
whatever the on period is versus the off period is.
Okay, I like that.
And then if you're general population, again, you'll usually see a HIIT workout that's going to be like 45 minutes in length, and it's going to be like 30 seconds on minutes. They'll probably get a little bit more rest, right?
Okay.
Again, just focusing on general population health. But if you're an athlete, you're going to want to just prescribe that work to rest ratio, whatever's closest to their competition of sport.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's it. That was really interesting. Subject that I love, actually, because that's something that as a coach, I see a lot, and I want to see some improvement about it, and I want to see more women out there working out and enjoy those benefits from strength training. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for accepting our guess
Right.
invite.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a great topic, and I actually enjoyed the information about the pregnancy and the workouts because I actually never saw a lot of information on that.
There's not a lot. There's
yeah,
actually, I know we're kind of wrapping up, but there's not a lot, and it's just because you don't see a lot of women wanting to risk being in a research study while pregnant, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
And
Well, if
so,
there is
yeah.
one,
Go ahead.
when I'm gonna be pregnant, let me know. I would love to participate. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Martinez, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.